Hello, welcome back to Graham's Storytime and chapter 12 of The Diamond in the Window. Now you can't tell, but it's been a while since I read because I broke my microphone and I can't really do this without my microphone. So now I have a new microphone and I can read again. I was telling Great Grandma that I was reading you this story and she said it's been so long that she couldn't really remember it, so I was refreshing her memory. This is called Mirror, Mirror on the Wall. Now look carefully. We've got Eleanor walking, and she has glasses on, and they're called spectacles. And there's Edward looking into a glass sphere. The sphere is a circle, a round globe. And in his mouth is some black licorice candy. So they'll be discussing that in this story. And licorice, I don't like the red licorice, but I love black licorice. When I was a kid, there wasn't red licorice, it was all black. Okay, mirror, mirror on the wall. Edward stood spread-legged, his empty lunchbox in one hand and an after-school licorice stick dangling from his mouth, and peered into the perfect silver surface of the gazing globe in the front yard. With his nose next to it, his reflection looks like some strange kind of creature with a giant proboscis and a small pin head. His hands, sticky from the licorice, made black smudges on the ball. The huge wooden house behind him was reflected in miniature, its walls bulging with the curves and its towers shrinking backwards. It had occurred to Edward that this gazing globe might be the mirror mentioned in the mystic verse. "O crystal ball," he said, "what do my tomorrows hold?" The gazing globe was silent. No miraculous picture bloomed up in the reflection. Edward asked it where the treasure was, and Ned and Nora and Prince Krishna. Nothing happened. Then he asked it if Edward Hall would ever be President of the United States. "Tell me, oh crystal ball," he said. Just for a moment he thought something was happening in the gazing globe. A small spidery form detached itself from the background and became larger and larger. Suddenly it was his sister's spectacled face, looking enormously back at him. Edward crossed his eyes at her and stuck out his tongue, which was horrible black from the licorice. "Look out," said Eleanor cheerfully. "Your face might freeze that way." Then she gave a little cry. "Oh, look at my nose!" "It isn't really that big," said Edward. "I know, but my freckles, I've got more." Eleanor covered her nose with her hand, gasped. "Please, oh please, crystal ball," she said. "Tell me it isn't true." She made mystic motions with her hands over the ball, and then she jumped, suddenly started up in the reflection and nearly filled it. A monstrous head with ginger hair. It was Uncle Freddy. "Oh, Uncle Freddy," said Eleanor, "just look at my new freckles. I've got more, haven't I? Be honest. I do, don't I?" And she stood up and looked at him, her forehead wrinkled and her new-found freckles displayed with shining frankness in the Indian summer sunshine. Uncle Freddy looked down at her and smiled. "My little tiger lily," he said, "faces of children are like flowers, a bit of natural beauty." He chucked Eleanor fondly under the chin, and then his expression changed. "But faces of grown-ups are man-made. There's never an instant's truce between virtue and vice. Beware how you paint yourself." "Paint?" said Eleanor, thinking hopefully of powder and rouge. "Do you think paint would cover them up?" "No, no," said Uncle Freddy, turning vaguely away. "I mean what Henry said, that we are all sculptors and painters, and our material is our own flesh and blood and bones." He turned back and shook his finger at her. "So carve yourself well." Then he stooped and looked at his own odd face in the gazing globe. Their courses looked older still. "Ah, well," he said, and all at once there were tears in his eyes. "It's what we could have been that breaks the heart. There is no limit to our capacity." He flung out his arms in a grand, generous gesture, and shouted a glorious question to his friend Waldo's. "Who can set bounds to the possibilities of a man?" Eleanor and Edward listened respectfully. Were they supposed to answer? But Uncle Freddy dropped his arms, rubbed his sleeve over his eyes, and went away. He was mumbling a phrase over and over, infinitude, private infinitude. Aunt Lily, who was sandwiching fall house cleaning in between her piano pupils, stood on the porch with her sleeves rolled up, energetically shaking out a dust mop. Something Uncle Freddy had said reminded her of her favorite hymn by James Russell Lowell, and now she brandished her dust mop in time and started singing it in her strong, clear contralto. Once to every man and nation comes the moment to decide, in the strife of truth with falsehood, for the good or evil side. The hymn had a threatening gloom that she loved. Dust kitties flew rhythmically out over the sprawling forsythia bushes, and Aunt Lily sang on as directly as she could the solemn last words of the first verse. And the choice goes by forever twixt the darkness and that light. "Put down your mop, Aunt Lily," said Edward. "Here comes a broom." It was a broom, Mary Jane Broom, marching up the walk, all ready to torture her teacher with new lessons, perfect note for note, hideous in noise. Aunt Lily sighed, put down her mop, and assumed her pleasant teacher manner. Eleanor stared at Mary Jane. She was Miss Prawn's niece, and her complexion was as white and pink as a good little girl's could be. Eleanor felt rebellious. All the good little girls could be. All the rest of the day she kept running her fingers over the bridge of her nose. She couldn't feel her freckles, but she knew they were there. She was still worrying about them as she lay in bed. The light was out, and Edward had already gone to sleep. Eleanor hunched herself up under the covers and sat with her long red hair streaming over her knees, staring across the room into the mirror that rose up on the gigantic old dresser. She could just see herself, a silhouette humped up in bed. She asked the mirror a question. "Mirror, mirror on the wall, what's to become of Eleanor Hall?" Who would ever marry anybody who was skinny and wore glasses and had freckles all over her face? Certainly not Benjamin Parks. Eleanor would have to be an old maid like Aunt Lily and give piano lessons, or maybe she would be a nurse or a teacher. Who or what was to be one day? Eleanor felt sorry for her pitiful self, and a tear fell on her pillow. She went to sleep at last, but not until she made up her mind about something. Tomorrow morning she was going to borrow some of the face powder on Aunt Lily's dressing table and cover her freckles with it. Aunt Lily didn't use it herself, and she'd never miss it. Then, as Eleanor and Edward slept, and the full October moon rose clear and sailed up into the sky, its light passed through the stone in the middle of the window and traveled across the room to the great dark world of the mirror. From there it was reflected back to the window again, to hit squarely one sloping triangular facet of the stone and be returned at a minute angle. From the mirror once more it made a journey at the speed of light to another facet of the stone, a long rectangular cleavage that instantly turned it back upon itself. Over and over again the reflecting surface of the stone returned the light to the mirror. Over and over again the mirror sent its rays back, until infinity upon infinity the reflections were beyond counting. Is she going to have a dream? We'll see.